Welcome everyone, Costin here with my campaign overview guide for Tausret, the true queen of Egypt, the wife of Seti, who starts in a military alliance with Seti. I would say that the Seti Tausret power block is one of the strongest in the game. You can certainly break it if you're playing someone else, but it does obviously give you a significant advantage to have one powerful ally from the very beginning of your campaign. Though you're not necessarily stuck being in an alliance with Seti, you can go down a different path if you so decide to do so. Now, Tausret does start with a chariot. It is a common chariot, and she does start with a bow, so she's got a bow chariot, a live bow chariot, so her survivability in combat is not necessarily going to be the greatest in the world. In fact, I would probably recommend that as soon as you're really able to switch out the chariot in her campaign, and yes, go down a different path down when it comes to combat ability. She does start worshipping Isis. Now, the benefit of worshipping Isis is that you do get desert attrition immunity from the very beginning of your campaign, which is useful considering the fact that Tausret does have the desert in her initial province, so she might take a significant amount of attrition if she isn't careful. Now let's talk about her faction, and then I'll get into her campaign plan. She does technically have some stronger chariots, but in reality chariots, no matter their strength, are not really worth using from my perspective. Well, the archer chariots do have some benefits on open field battles, but the vast majority of battles are going to be settlement battles or siege battles that you're going to fight in the campaign. So while Tausret might do well in an open field battle, she will struggle if you are using chariots, though you don't have to, but she will struggle in those kind of settlement battles and siege battles. Keep that in mind when we're talking about chariots, because you do start with 2 chariot units, and Tausret herself is on a chariot as well. In terms of her command, active and passive, her active command is you can command the province to give you its per turn resources production immediately. This can give you a nice pool of resources, though I would argue it's not really good enough to justify using compared to waiting until Shamsuhor. Because if you wait until Shamsuhor, you will be able to get instant construction for free for a couple of buildings. This is a fairly significant benefit, and it's one that no one else has, with the exception of the Hittite factions, or rather factions that are going for the throne of Hatti, because instant construction for free will save you up a lot of gold, and will allow you to get a significant amount of power from your settlements. And really, Tausret's benefit is with regards to those settlements. Like, if we look at her buildings, she gets better production buildings and bonus, an extra bonus for having more of them. So she gets the grain pit, the gold appraiser, the advanced bronze work pipeline, the raw material stockpile. Now, these structures do exist for other factions. Tausret's benefit is the extra production for every free production building in the province. And also, I think they're just, a bit better when we're looking at Tausret's benefit. But these do cost happiness. So happiness may be an issue in Tausret's campaign, though happiness is not necessarily a significant issue in Total War Pharaoh, because we no longer have the legendary difficulty modifier. Thankfully, they've decided to finally remove that in a Total War game. That's good from my perspective. In terms of titles, her titles favor chariot. The chariots, they also provide defensive bonuses in battle and improve province management. So if we're looking at the titles that she does have access to in her campaign, beyond the regular Egyptian ones like Overseer of the Militia and all that kind of stuff, she does get, like, you have to look deeper into the title. She gets Loved by the People for our size and happiness. She gets Line of Sight and Reinforcement Radius, Workforce Growth, and Units Start Fresh, though I think that's available for others. She does get Lavish in Parades, which gives Influence, Ammunition, and Speed. She also gets Hunt Master, which gives replenishment, ammunition, missile range, and reload speed. I would say actually Tausret, the true benefit in her campaign are her archers. Overseer of Sieges, and then Prudent in Scavenging, which increases replenishment, but costs a significant amount in terms of movement range. I would not use that. You do get Bright as the Sun, which gives Trot for missile chariots, which increases accuracy but reduces speed, charge speed, and reload time. She also reduces construction cost and increases resource resources from ransoming prisoners in her campaign. Looking at her unique units, beyond the ones she starts with, she does get infantry housing. The units you're going to get here are of the lighter variety, but you do get things like you start with Egyptian peasants, you get then Egyptian swordsmen, which are still light units, but then you can get things like Egyptian axemen, still light units, but decent amount of armor at 50 over there, and certainly decent level of stats, melee stats, if we're looking at that. And then finally, the Royal Infantry Hull. If there is an issue in which gives her Queen's Guard, which have 75 armor, so that's really medium infantry over there, excellent defense, and expert in flanking, and also resistant to heat, and they also have Encourage on them. She does get the Egyptian archers and Egyptian archers with two-handed. Like, you get two-handed axemen, or you get clubs. So her true strength are not her chariots from my perspective, though her tier 5 units are chariots. So you're going to be lacking in terms of like pure, really good tier 5 units. But if we consider her archer units, she does get those Egyptian archers, which do have a decent level of armor on them, and crucially have a good amount of melee damage. That is the true strength that Tausret does have in her campaign. She can get upper Egyptian mace axe warriors, so those will have a decent level of armor piercing, decent level of armor, and she can get upper Egyptian Kopeshi warriors. Those are the native units she starts with, but of course native units are available to everyone else that just gains the territory. She is lacking in terms of the unique units, to be clear, but the archers can help out with that. I would certainly say that one of the problems with the native Egyptian units, like if you look at tier 3, you get upper Egyptian spearmen, good enough line holders, and upper Egyptian swordsmen, who are also decent enough line holders, but they're obviously lacking in terms of the armor piercing. But how do you make up for that? Well, you can use your archers, because your archers will actually have a really good amount of armor piercing, and while their melee stats are not the greatest in the world, they're certainly capable of holding their own in a battle. So Tausret's true strength in the early game is from that. Late game, she is going to struggle because of the lack of those unique units. But to be honest, the late game, I would say the late game is never as significant as the early game. It's really the early game that's generally the more significant aspect of a campaign. Now, in terms of the court situation, she will be the target of plots more often, but you can use your unique Flip Intrigue to turn them against your enemies. Flip costs gold and is cheaper to use on a discovered plot. So first use Gossip to reveal the plotter. That is the benefit she does have. Now in terms of legacy, you can go for Merchant, you have a good enough position for that, or you can go with the 10, because you do also have, you also are reasonably close enough to a 10 city. So is Seti, by the way. If you're playing Seti, going with the 10 as God to get the unique city can be a great benefit. Also, you do have a lot of gods discovered. You will be able to get a lot of the Egyptian gods from the very beginning. You do also have Isis, who is certainly a solid enough choice to use from the beginning of your campaign. Now, in terms of research, what you would probably want to get would be Heart of Egypt to get, and to also get another god dedication slot. You can also go for Capitalize and Community Spirit, or you can improve diplomatic relations with Egyptians, which is something that you may want to go for. I would say the Egyptians have probably the weakest research tree, because, like, yeah, the Canaanites with their legitimacy for every military ally is certainly very, very, very useful that you can get. One of the things that is pretty damn useful for the Egyptians is to get the training mandate power. This will take 27 turns, to be clear, but it does give you 20% armor-piercing missile damage on rank 9 missile infantry. So maybe not something you're rushing for, but something that you can consider going for later on in a campaign. But I would say there is no particular research that is significantly better than others, which is not something you can really say for the Canaanites in particular, or even the Hittites. But there are plenty of choices you can go when you're considering research. Now, in terms of campaign situation, you do start in control of Yebu province, or half of Yebu province. So you have a good amount of food. You also have the food building over here. You might want to get rid of this to be able to construct another building, because this is a tier 3 settlement that you do start with. So one of the things you might consider is getting rid of getting rid of one of these buildings one way or another. Maybe getting rid of the summer festival grounds in order to get access to the archers. Or you could get rid of the green pit. Again, getting target yard quickly in a campaign can be a pretty sizable benefit early on in your campaign, because it will give you the archer benefit that you would need. Now, in terms of campaign situation, you actually have a lot of flexibility in your campaign, because you do start on the Nile, and so you have access to pretty much all the territories on the Nile that if you want to get access to. You do start with unreliable rating, because, well, you're a woman, and apparently people hate you for that, for whatever reason. But you do start a war with this faction that controls these two settlements. They're going to be fairly easy to deal with. I'd recommend fighting these battles manually, then auto-resolve them. Though first I would probably go pick up a prayer of Isis, then march back here, which will give you the movement range to be able to attack this army. And then you fight this particular battle. You can obviously auto-resolve it, but if you manually fight it, you will generally take less casualties. And then you move over here, and you start, like, your archers are your strength, but you can also make use early on of Upper Egyptian conscripted axemen. And yeah, just get rid of the green pit and start constructing buildings over here to improve your situation. And one of the things I would recommend getting in terms of titles would be to get Overseer of Militia, because you do want to get those recruit ranks plus free early on in your campaign. That can be a fairly sizable benefit. Then turn 2, you attack this particular army, or this army might decide to attack you, depending on the number of casualties you take. Actually, taking a bit higher casualties in the initial battle is not necessarily downside. So you then move to the settlement. Maybe one of the things you may want to do is to actually instantly construct an Egyptian way station over here in particular, and to take this province. This will give you gold, this will give you stone, and you will have wood. Now, what do you do after that? Well, the desert tribes do hate you, but they do have to come through this territory to attack you, and they might be fighting other factions. You could certainly play a desert campaign as Tausret, but just keep in mind, even though you have immunity to desert attrition, there's still a lot of territories to cover. And the thing is, the Libyan endgame crisis, or the Libyan rogue armies, will be spawning over here to the west. So actually going west, yes, there is a significant amount of bronze, there is a significant amount of stone, but it may not necessarily be what you're aiming for. Instead, I would go for Abju province, take that over, get the stone over there, get the food. And then what you decide to do after that is your particular choice. You can go for Min province, take over this territory. Though keep in mind, you are going to end up contesting this with Seti. Though that's not necessarily too big of a deal. You could also aim for Wazet, because there are benefits. There is a Pharaoh crown over there that's actually pretty good that you can get. So once you start contesting a throne. The important thing for Tausret is that she has a lot of sacred lands that are easily accessible in her campaign. So she can gain a significant amount of legitimacy through that. So ultimately, regardless of what you do, you're not really going to deal with any major faction. Amon Mess doesn't really hate you that much. I mean, you look at your relationship with Amon Mess, you actually get a good relationship with Amon Mess. So if you want to, like, you could go over here, declare war on his initial faction, and start, you know, getting resources over here, like the gold that I'm just going to pick up in this situation. And that faction he starts a war with is not going to be an issue for you, because he's always going to wipe it out in short order. So don't be concerned about that. Same with Seti, by the way. You can, because you do have vision on Seti as well, you can also go to Seti and declare war on his initial faction. Though I would not take the gold, by the way. I would take the stone. So, like, so in this case, like, you know, just picking up some of the stone would be a good idea, like 920 stone, picking that up, using it for yourself, to build up your settlements. As Egypt, you do need stone for settlements. You don't really need a whole lot of wood as Egypt. In terms of wood, that is actually going to be a bit of a problem, because I don't think there's any real wood next to you. But keep in mind something. As Egypt, if we look at there are certain settlements where you can get wood even if the main resource type is is something else, just not necessarily some of the ones. So you might have to end up trading for wood. As stated, there's not a whole lot next to you. There's bronze, there's stone. I will take bronze and stone any single day compared to wood. In fact, maybe you might want to trade for wood with regards to those declarations of war that I just originally did over there. That might be a worthwhile idea when you're playing as Tausret, just to get that extra wood income that you do have early, that you would need early on. Now, keep in mind, when you're looking at campaign, when you do start the campaign, you will get some benefits and resources. So 20 turns you'll be getting 50 wood, 12 turns you'll be getting administrative support. So I'm not quite sure how administration does work in the game, not entirely certain about that, but regardless of that, however, I think they wanted to use the system of administration, but they decided not to, so just bear that in mind. Bear that in mind in the campaign. But you do have an extra bit of resources for the early game, but those resources, that extra benefit is going to die out. So you will want a bit of wood early on, though this is where the benefit of going with the merchant comes in, because you can always trade the food and the stone you have, and you will have certainly plentiful food in your campaign, or even the gold, though mainly you'll be trading food. Trading the food for wood, trading the food even for bronze, because there is a trading location that will give you a lot of bronze early on in the campaign, may be very well worth it. And your campaign plan, personally, I would just take like the territories near the Nile, because like the Nile is great for navigation. So like the east doesn't have to be defended, the west does need to be, the west bank of the Nile needs to be defended. So whatever you take in the east is going to be relatively secure once you wipe out the factions there. So I would more so like just take these two provinces in the west, on the west bank of the Nile, and then conquer a lot of the east. But just keep in mind, a lot of the east doesn't necessarily have sacred sites, though you should be able to gain a significant upper hand when it comes to legitimacy. So let me just take a look at campaign that I've been. So just loading up a particular save if I can find it. There we go, turn 16 over here. So legendary quick save. Customized campaign to be sure, but it does give you an idea of what Tausret can offer. Okay, so let's take a look over here.
Starve them out!
So turn 16, what you can see that I've done over here, I've taken my initial province, I have marched over here to the north, I've ignored the tribes. They are fairly weak factions, so they're not really going to be a big issue. And now I am just going to finish Wazet, and then once that's done, I can march north, go into Kenmit. If you can vassalize Seti, that would be a significant benefit. The Civil War is in full swing. Now keep in mind, this is with extra campaign movement range. Always remember, you can increase your campaign movement range, and right here I am top of the game when it comes to legitimacy. Just through what I've done here, like just taking all of these territories over here, in like basically just the initial two provinces and a decent chunk of Wazet, that has been enough to elevate Tausret to top of the game when we're talking about legitimacy. So it's fairly easy to get the legitimacy as Tausret, to end up dominating Egypt, gaining the crown, getting to a ridiculous point. Like if we're looking at legitimacy over here, I'm getting 30 from Sacred Lands, I'm getting 24 from Monuments. That's another thing to also point out, and 32 from Landmarks, because that's one of the things that Tausret does have in her benefit. She does have landmarks that she can use. So in the Yebu province, there is the Colossi of Memnon, so that gives you 5 legitimacy. You can also build an Egyptian monument, so that's 8 extra. Then we look at Abju, and when we're looking at Abju, we got the Great Temple of Abydos. We also have the Dejeru, so that's 5 extra. So, and the Ramesseum. So you get significant amount of legitimacy they can gain through these particular landmarks that are in these outposts, and on top of that, building Egyptian outposts as well. So yeah, Tausret basically may have the biggest legitimacy upper hand early on in the campaign of anyone else. And your armies can look the way it does right there, like this particular army over here, where is Tausret? So Tausret is marching over here because I obviously did declare war on Egypt. So when on Memphis. So when you declare war on Mennefer, right? When you do engage in that war, you are going to declare war on all of these factions. Now, if you can do this quickly enough, keep in mind, you might ignore Wazet if you're capable of doing this. Like, you will be fighting free factions in Memphis. Memphis itself is meaningless, but these free factions, they will produce full stacks. But if you could take this territory, you're looking at bronze, you're looking at stone, you're looking at gold, you're looking at more bronze. So you're looking at significant pool of resources that you can get access to. So if you can take all of this territory, and the factions over here on the east side are not going to declare war on you, so you could leave them for later. Like if you're playing on the vanilla difficulty as opposed to, you know, this customized difficulty where I have more resources and more benefits, you can end up in a fairly dominant position as Tausret in your campaign. Can I win this battle? Well, it is just a bunch of lower Egyptian militia and spear militia. So absolutely so. Yes, you can win this battle, and you can see here that I've gotten a bunch of Egyptian archers because again, they're decent enough in melee that they should be able to win in that situation. So keep that in mind about Tausret. She does have a significant strength, in particular in the early game. She's not the greatest in the late game potential because of her lack of units, but she does certainly have a good amount of early game strength that she does have access to. So remember that particular aspect. Costin here signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable notifications, and stay tuned for more.